if it hadn't been architecture, I would have been a chef. Enjoy what you're doing, but have an eye to the future. You're seeing so much AI around. It's about how you prompt it. And it's like anything, it's like an architect who gets a brief. If you give an architect a bad brief, you're going to get a bad building. Understand who you are as a person and what you want to achieve. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
So we have Kerem Cengiz, the Managing Director for LWK Partners, Middle East and North Africa. Welcome to our podcast, Kerem.
Thank you, Ravi. Lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'd love to begin for our audience to know about your role at the moment, the company you work for, a little bit of background about.
Sure. Okay, so as you introduced me, I'm the Managing Director of LWK Partners for the Middle East region, Middle East and North Africa. We established the business here in 2018, at a very challenging time. It was when particularly the UAE market was on the downside. The business felt that this was, as a lot of our business is Hong Kong originated, very commercially minded and very sort of commercially astute. They said, okay, this is a good time to enter a market. And they were right. It was cheaper to set up at that time and all that.
Oh, so that itself is quite late.
It was late. So we've only really been in the market for 6 years here. I mean, as a business, we're the 27th largest practice in the world.
Nice.
Of architects and designers only. We're not engineers. We are Hong Kong originated, as I said, and we have 12 international offices and around 1,000 staff across those offices. Majority of them are in mainland China. We have 2 in Hong Kong and Macau, Singapore, Malaysia, and Dubai and Riyadh, which are the 2 newest studios. Riyadh was opened in 2020, just as COVID was kicking in, and we were all working from our bedrooms. But that office is now, it's a small office, but it's a growing office, and the work that we're getting from Saudi Arabia is remarkable. We have a team of about 35 people across the region, and we work very collaboratively with our partners and our co-offices or studios in Hong Kong particularly. We work very collaboratively as a multidisciplinary team. We work with our master planning teams, we work with our landscape teams, and now more increasingly as our own reputation as being cemented in the region. A lot of our teams in China are participating in some of our bigger scale projects, particularly the delivery phases, because they have such tremendous skill in the executive architect role. So it's an exciting time for us. It's LWK in a nutshell.
Thank you. With offices in multiple locations, let's say, for example, you work on a project in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Do you involve teams from other countries as well? Or
absolutely. I mean, look, I think that there's always challenges working internationally. I mean, let's forget the logistics of time zones. I mean, that's a given. Hong Kong, China, depends on which part of China, but Hong Kong is 4 hours ahead. So that obviously has to be factored in. We work with teams that are based in America, all over the place, or that are outside of our own business. But as a practice, the internationalization of the business for a long time, it was Asia-centric. The step into Dubai was the beginning of the internationalization of LWK. And so part of that journey has been first establishing a footprint here, but then bringing the rest of the company on that journey into new fields and new cultures. And as you can imagine, like anybody, being exposed to difference is something that most people embrace warmly. And so almost every project that we do, that we have a landscape or public realm component in, we work with our teams in Hong Kong and Shenzhen, where the expertise lies. And of course, part of that journey is a learning experience, because, delivering in Southeast Asia, Asian climates is very different from the Middle East. There are cultural differences. I mean, when you think of China, it's the size of Europe. So, if you're dealing with a team in Shenzhen, which is in Guangdong province, or you're dealing with someone up in Beijing, completely different mindsets. It's like Europe, you can't say a Brit's the same as someone in Poland. So you have to take different people on different journeys. But that in itself is a unique challenge, and it's a very rewarding challenge. It can also at times be frustrating and hard work. But when you start to see the business evolve into something different and people responding in different ways and wanting to be energized by having the opportunity. I was recently in Hong Kong, part of this evolution process, and you call it the sharing process. We had a sort of a session with the teams in the common meeting area, and there was a huge amount of energy and interest in the work they're doing, that they're doing themselves, but also the work that they're hearing about that's coming forward from the region, particularly KSA. And they all want to be part of it in one way or another. And why not? Because, I spent 25 years of my career traveling the world and working internationally. Majority of architects.
How many countries have you traveled? Do you have a count?
I'll do a geographic zone. So I started my career in the UK, predominantly worked in the UK and Western Europe. Actually, my first job was in Moscow in 1994, which was 2 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And that was a remarkable time. I mean, it mirrors to a certain extent the energy and the excitement we feel now in Saudi Arabia. When you go to a new place that's just developing and it's just starting this journey, there's a buzz and a freshness that lasts for only a certain period of time. And I've been lucky enough to experience that several times in my career.
So it started with the 94.
It started with 94 in Moscow and Russia and, breaking that market. I was working for a Turkish contracting company then on site, and I was doing 12-hour shifts for 2 days on, 2 days off for 14 days at a time. So it was pretty intense. We lived on the site. We ate on the site. It was sort of just hit the deadlines. But interestingly, after that, I went back to the UK, finished my education, and started working in the UK. But after I'd qualified as an architect, suddenly Russia became another part of my life again. So at that stage, I was working for a company called PRP. Moscow was booming again. I was asked to go and establish their office in Moscow, which I did. And that was, again, across the course of my career, I set up 3 international offices. Moscow was the first one for PRP. And then I moved to a company called Chapman Taylor and set up their office in Ukraine, in Kiev, and spent 3 years there. And from that area, I was working across various parts of the Soviet Union, so Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, all that sort of Black Sea coast up into the Stans. And then I did a complete flip and moved to Australia and spent 5 years living in Melbourne, working on projects in Australasia and Asia Pacific, which was fascinating, doing some wonderful projects in Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia. And then from there, I moved to the Middle East and interestingly worked initially as the managing director of a local business. I did that for 2.5 years. And then...
so that's a shift from being an architect.
Well,
that period, 2 years.
I mean, the role of managing director has been a journey that started from my first job in London. I did my first degree at the Birmingham School of Architecture, my undergraduate, and then I did my postgraduate at the Bartlett, which is the University College London School of Architecture. So it's one of the premier universities in the world.
And this was which year?
I started in 95, finished in 97. I did my 2 years postgrad there. Very challenging environment, very self-driven environment, very sort of creative and highly competitive environment. It was tough. I didn't really enjoy those years. They were sort of...
Meaning you got into architecture even to study by choice? Or
yes, by choice, that's correct. I mean, if it hadn't been architecture, I would have been a chef.
Interesting.
That's the other creativities in your hands. I mean, I'm dyslexic.
Right.
And so practical things are things that really appeal to me rather than I'm not necessarily cerebral, but not the average 9 to 5. I mean, I'm very sort of spatially aware, and like a lot of architects. But I did well. I came out with some distinctions from the Bartlett. But I really didn't enjoy those few years. It was very tough. And I took a 6-month break and worked on a building site as a labourer. Yeah. Just because I said I had enough of being an architect. And so laying bricks and cement around the building site, and the romance of being an itinerant worker wore off very quickly. And I did return to architecture. But I then was employed by a company called Shepherd Epstein Hunter, which in the UK, going back into the 70s and 60s and 80s was a very well-respected company. And it became very clear to me very early on that even though I'd been to a very good school, design didn't come to me naturally. The job of an architect, I did it, and I did it well, and I did it competently, but others did it in a more fluid way. And so I said to myself, look, the university was competitive, the environment I was in, everybody wants their own opportunity. Everybody wants to grow as an architect. They want to be leading their own projects and being at the front. And I said to myself, do I want to do this for the next 30, 40 years of my life? And the short answer was no, because it's going to be I'm not going to go as far as I want to go. So I said, what do I want to be? I said, I want to lead a business. I want to be, I looked at the mentors in the business, how they were working with us and supporting us. I said, I want to be a bit like that. I want to make the decisions. I want to steer the ship. What do I need to do that? And so I said to myself, well, what is the job of an architect? I need to learn, surely to be a leader, I need to have competency in all the aspects of the industry. And then I spent the preceding decade training myself in, the job of the architect in terms of design, but also writing specifications, writing contracts, managing contracts, detailing, business developing, project managing, commercial management. And gradually from office to office, I migrated through this hierarchy, and I became a director at the age of 34. That was at Chapman Taylor, running and setting up their Kiev studio. And from there, we moved into Australia, again, another directorship, and this time investments into a business. And then the next step into the Middle East was as a managing director of a local practice here, helping them to sort of going from a boutique practice, setting up systems that weren't there, and challenging big cultural shift again, going down from large-scale international businesses that are very established and very system-driven to a company that had no systems at all, and trying to impose that, creating a whole value management system for them, creating a QMS system for them. Excuse me. Challenging experience. Did it for 2.5 years. It was enough. After 2.5 years, I thought, let me have a break. And I've worked hard for 2.5 years. I've got some less money. I'll go and travel for a bit. So I started to sort of just relax. 2 weeks later, got a call from a friend of mine. It was a headhunter in Hong Kong. Said, hey, what are you doing? There's this company in Hong Kong that wants to set up an office in Dubai. Would you be interested? And of course, I said yes. And there you go, the LWK story. And had a very interesting series of interviews. And then met the partners in Hong Kong. They came here for a tour of the region, and we said, okay, let's commit. And of course, I said, guys, you're entering on the downturn. And they said, no, we're going to invest. And of course, no one foresaw COVID coming 2 years later. So it's been a tough journey for the first 4 years, and now we're climbing out of it. But those 4 years, we established our reputation here. We fought for our position, and we fought for who we are as individuals. And my partner and I, Kuros Alegi, we used our own experience as the leaders of the business to project that value, his design expertise, my business acumen, my interest in marketing and business development. And now, from relatively humble beginning, I think we're probably recognized as a good practice in the region. People know us. I'm very proud of that we've achieved that so quickly. I know a lot of people didn't think we'd make it, but we have, and we continue to strive, and we believe we'll grow strong.
Well, congratulations on the positioning at the moment. So 98, you did not relate yourself as much to the architecture that you were studying. And then
I perceive myself as an architect, but
you don't like some elements of it.
it wasn't that I didn't like the elements of it. It's just that I saw that to be the designer and to be the deliverer.
But then the idea of leading a business interested you. So you learn the ropes of what the design is. 25 years.
You should have, don't remind me. It's been a fascinating journey. I can't say that I regret a day of it. There've been some really hard experiences, but all of those experiences have been part of a journey that's made me the person I am today. And I think, architecture is a broad church. People who go into architecture, a lot of, we see many young guys who come through our and ladies who come through our studios for internships. Everybody wants to be a designer. Everybody wants to be a designer. That's great. And everybody thinks like that when you start, because you think, I'm going to design a building. That's what architecture is. And of course, it's about designing spaces, about designing places. But there is more to architecture than that. There are the minutiae that you can really delve into. I mean, you can zoom down corridors that will take you into different dimensions. And you could stay there, lost in space, or you can be as broad and as wide-ranging as I am. The choices are yours. But I think, from my perspective, life passes very quickly. 25 years has flown by. I still don't know what it means to be 52. I'm just Kerem. But those 25 years have flown. The worst thing in life is to wake up one day and regret the choices you've made, or think, what if I'd done something different? So I guess what I'm advocating is, for young professionals, is enjoy what you're doing, but have an eye to the future. Understand who you are as a person and what you want to achieve. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? If you want to challenge your weaknesses, go for it. But if you know what your strengths are, play to them. And evolve yourself as an architect in the way you want, not just the way the company expects you to. And, you have choice. You're not a salary slave. You can always step out and move on. Yes, that comes with challenges. That comes with risk. Depends on what your appetite for risk is. Mine is quite high. I don't mind taking risks. Otherwise, I wouldn't have helped set up a business in the middle of a downturn. I believe in my capability. Yes, I've had failures, but those failures are not something that set me back. They're things that I reframe as learning experiences. And I think those learning experiences are the ones that have the most value more than successes. The successes are great. They're peaks, they're pinnacles. But the troughs are the ones that you have to ride through, and they're the ones that you have to, as a leader, you can't drop your head. You have to lift everybody. So you have to see those challenges as learning experiences. And if you have a good team around you and a good support network around you, a good company that believes in you and that has trust, and it's such an important thing, having trust in the people that you work with, you can make it. One way or another. Yes, you'd have to make hard decisions. We all had to make hard decisions through COVID. But everybody pulled together. We said as a team, let's talk about this. This is our challenges, guys. What should we do? Shall we let people go, or shall we all make the sacrifices that we need to make to stay alive? And we voted it as on a team, and we made the sacrifices, and we came through it.
Is it for 25 years being an architect that weighs more for you, or is it being the leader?
Don't get me wrong. I enjoy leadership. Otherwise, I mean, you wouldn't take it if you didn't enjoy it. I'd be a liar. I'm not modest. I'm not arrogant. But if you don't want that responsibility, leadership is about responsibility.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that. I thrive under that sort of set of scenarios. It's a facet to who I am. I'm still an architect, even though right now I don't lay hands on the drawing board or on the computer in that sense. I still have the cerebral abilities that I had as a designer. And so I'm very involved in the discourse around the design in terms of using my business capabilities also to feed into the design process, because we don't work in isolation, design team, management team. I'm an all-rounder. And so I take a very active part in all the projects in the sense that I listen to what stakeholders on the client side want. And I try to help the team to understand what those drivers are to make the project as successful as possible for the client, but also for us. Because if we understand what it is that our clients want and translate that into tangible outcomes, that's just as important as actually drawing it, that understanding. And that's not always something that architects have. Some architects, pure architects, are very narrowly focused. And so being able to have that allows other things to come into in a way that's less challenging than perhaps being confronted by the client. This terrible. If I can foresee those challenges and as a part of the team, help the design team to absorb that, then I'm doing a good job.
What's your view on BIM and AI coming into the play?
Look, I mean, the whole BIM thing, I'm not quite sure why we're still talking about BIM, because it's been around for so long.
Yeah.
Engineers have been using it for nearly 2 decades. And so...
But it's talked more now.
It's talked more now. Look, I mean, it's inevitable, and it's a useful tool, but it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's... Once upon a time, you were using pencils and blue pencils and razor blades. Now you're using BIM, and now AI is coming along. So as a tool, it has its place. It also has its limitations. And I think one of the biggest challenges is not the tool itself; it's the understanding of what the tool is for. And I think that those of us in the industry have misconceptions. And those of us who commission us also don't really understand why they're commissioning us in terms of BIM and what the expectations are. They just know they need to use it, but what are the value adds? And so, as part of the business LWK is part of a broader holding company, our parent company, and within that parent company there are a number of other businesses. And one of the associated businesses, a company called ISBIM.
Right.
They're the largest BIM delivery business in Southeast Asia, and we acquired a part of their business. They came under our umbrella, and they've been around for a decade and a half. And they started as BIM delivery agents and BIM trainers, and now they've gone into digital transformation and that process itself starts with BIM. And digital transformation is all about functionality and management. And so when you perceive what the value is, if you take a BIM model on itself and just put it there, and someone says, okay, you can measure, quantitative surveyors can measure. So that's about the most basic thing you can do. First, you do clash detection. So yes, it means that you make less mistakes. So there's less errors on site. That's great. Tick. Very practical solution. Quantity surveyor can measure off products. And again, it also depends on the level of detail that you put into a BIM model. I mean, people don't understand that you wouldn't necessarily model everything in the BIM. You add a surface and you add a value to that surface, and that's it. You don't actually open the model and every nut and bolt is drawn, because it depends on what you're doing. That's LOD 500. You can get to that level. 600, 700 is when you get into facilities management and digital transformation. Having that understanding is what's really adds value to what BIM represents, because as a model, as everybody tells you, there's a lot more front-end work required in BIM, because it takes a lot of data. It's all about data. The world we live in now, and the world that we're emerging into, is all about data and data management.
For sure.
And what you do with that data. So what's the point of creating lots of big data if you don't use it?
Right.
And what are you going to use it for? And that's a question that a lot of, I think in Saudi Arabia, though, the digital transformation agenda is more advanced than in the UAE.
Quite robust.
It's very robust. They really jumped into that. They understand the value of collating data and then using that data. Here in the UAE, sadly, I don't see it as integrated. There is a BIM mandate in Dubai municipality, but I don't see what they're doing with it. It's not shared. It's not visible. For example, some of the big entities I'll start with an example first from Japan. So ISBIM, they did the digital transformation of 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Okay, so 7-Eleven has 25,000 outlets in Japan. So to manage 25,000 outlets is a huge facilities management gig, right?
Yeah.
Massive. I mean, geographically, employment-wise, in terms of all the people that have to go around repairing things, cataloging every component in the factory or in the stores, lighting, parts for fridges, etc., etc. So what we did is we modeled all those stores. We put all the data in, and we put it into a common data environment, which is basically a digital platform that allows you to zoom into any store, examine that store, be given an alerts on that store that this store needs this component needs to run out of milk, coffee, tea, whatever it is. And that will the system will automatically advise the facilities management that this is needed. Now, they went from 3,000 people to 250.
Yeah.
So there's an efficiency in running the business. There is an argument, and people who are very so socially driven will say, well, that means 2,500 people lost their jobs.
Employment.
However, in that process, it has, and this is where the integration has to come in. You have to do these advances in combination with upskilling people, so their own jobs become, or their own job opportunities become better. If you do these things in isolation as a society, the value of transformation becomes lost. It then does become downgraded in terms of how it impacts on human society. So I think having an integrated approach to digital transformation has value for businesses, but it should also have value for society. And I think that's where that conversation isn't happening yet, and I think it needs to. I think efforts by Dubai municipality is heading in that direction. I'm not sure how far it's getting, but it's certainly more engaged than other places in the world. The other thing for big entities that we work with that are transforming all their assets is, yes, again, the same issues around facilities management is there, but it's also how they can go IPO. If you've got 50 assets, they're all integrated, you all control them, you know everything about them. That's a very valuable package of data that you can sell, and it puts a huge amount of value onto. So my view around BIM particularly is that it's a tool. How we use that tool and how we integrate that tool more broadly into society. First of all, we work in business, so how you integrate that into business is important. And people who are initiating that process need to understand that process, and they need to explain that process upstream as well as downstream, and also laterally across the industry. And so there's a lot of people, there was a conversation today about BIM in the meeting. I think it was interesting, but I think it really just very much skimmed the surface, because I think a lot of people in our industry, again, just see it as a tool. They don't see beyond it. And that's one of the reasons why our parent company deals with all of these components, because we invest in technology and we invest in innovation as a company, because we know that our profession, largely you chase your book. You win a project, you put a number down, and then you chase that number. Well, sometimes you come out with beautiful outcomes, sometimes you come out with lots of outcomes, but eventually you're chasing money. We as a business, we want to work well, our core business is architecture at the parent company level, but we want to see how the elements that are around architecture and design and where it's at breaking out into digital transformation, going into AI, how that can uplift the whole business as a whole, and how those become interrelated. So AI, yes, there's a lot of noise around AI. You're seeing so much AI around us. It's funny, I was thinking about this the other night, where it's only been really buzzing now for, let's say, 12 months. Okay, really buzzing with ChatGPT and, all the platforms that you can now get onto, and we're already jaded. Every time we look at an image now, is it AI, is it real, whatever, and so those boundaries are already blurred, and that time scale from how it used to be, that it would take you a decade before you became jaded, is now less than a year. And later on, it'll be a month, it'll be a week, whatever it will be. AI, who knows where it's going to go?
Yeah.
The genie is out of the bottle. There's no point turning our back on it. It's how we interface with that now, how we as a society, do we take a responsible position on it? Do we take a position where we control it and we put certain measures around it that in its broader sense, rather than particularly for the industry, but in what it could be? There's these people who have the dystopian vision of Terminator and we're all going to be exterminated by the machines. I don't buy into that personally. However, I do buy into there will be certainly redundancies on the things that we as human beings do. So that has to be engaged with. Because already I was listening to a fascinating article on the radio this morning where these deep sea recovery companies who go in and typically with guys who would live underwater for big periods of time and then slowly pressurize after years, now being replaced by robots. And the huge expense around those ships that supported that whole process is now coming to a much smaller scale, much affordable scale. So that means that you can spend a lot longer doing that underwater exploration. The machines don't have to come up that regularly. So there's whole aspects of things that we've done as human beings that will soon not be available to us because we have made the choices and we have made the direction, whether it's deliberately or just by happenstance, that this machine will now do this job because it's more cost effective. And ultimately, it's a balance between commercial and civil society. And I think that's where the debate comes in place. And again, AI within our industry is a tool. Quite logically, it's perceivable that AI could design any standard building.
Correct.
You can put enough data into that and it can design a tower, can design the MEP, can design the structures based on lots of metrics that are already available.
Do you see that as a threat or as a tool which is a value add to the whole process?
Look, I don't know how much you've engaged with these platforms, but it's very much around, at the moment at least, who knows what's going to happen in the future. Again, I caveat that. It's about how you prompt it. And it's like anything, it's like an architect who gets a brief. If you give an architect a bad brief, you're going to get a bad building.
Right.
If you don't prompt the machine or the intelligence to guide it properly, it's only going to work out with the parameters that's given.
Well, let's say we do, feed the right data and these AIs produce good designs. Is that something you personally think is the right thing? Or you think, will it reduce the dependency on human beings in producing good designs?
I think there's a pluses and minuses. I think in certain respects, there are elements of what we do as architects that are the jobs that we do or the projects we undertake. Some of them are very standardized and probably undervalues who we are. I mean, sadly, from my perspective, at least in this region, the value of the role of the architect is much diminished in comparison to other parts of the world.
Because of,
I think lots of reasons, and I mean, I have to be delicate about this, but there are a number of causes for it. But I think generally, architects are not what they used to be, and it's largely their own fault. In the sense that we as an industry have not managed our own evolution particularly well, and so our perceived value as an industry, rather than you still have the star architects who are perceived as valuable, and so they're treated in different ways. However, even they have their struggles. But there are a whole, you can go out to sort of industrial areas and, do you need an architect to design an industrial shed? Probably not. So how do you, is it, yes, it may be a job for someone, but is it really that's what that person wants to be doing? Or can we give that person an opportunity? And that has to be set against the fact that our developed societies are also aging societies. Perhaps in the emerging economies, even China now, that was once a very young society, is now becoming an aged society.
correct.
So you have India, South Asia, Africa, South America, that still represents
The younger
generations, whereas the other parts of the world, we're aging and our birth rates are dropping. And so there will be a point when there will have to be decisions, and there have to be understandings that there aren't going to be enough people to do all the jobs that are required to sustain the society that we want in the way we want it. And so I'll answer the question in that sense, is that we as an industry, we can either just cross that bridge when we get to it and be given a fait accompli, or as an industry, we can talk to each other and lead the process and help that decision-making process and help that guidance.
True.
And my big fear is that we won't.
Well, I think the opposite. I think perhaps. I hope it happens.
I hope it does. I mean, I really do, because I've just seen too many examples where we haven't taken control of our own industry and we've lost ground. Not that it's a battle, but we as a if you look at the industry now, it's very stratified. You've got specifiers, specification specialists, you've got facade specialists, you've got this specialist, that specialist, every specialist. Once upon a time, architects did everything. The architect was...
now I understand when you say the role of an architect is diminishing.
Slowly, the onion is getting smaller and smaller. The skins are going out, and I have no issue with that. I have personal issues with it, because the way I was educated, you should be able to do the job.
Right.
You should be able to do take the briefs, win the work, take the brief, evolve the brief into a piece of design, develop the design into construction information, tender the project, manage the construction on site, and deliver the end product. And do the whole thing yourself, not have to go to a specialist. So you write the specification, you draw the detail. Not, I don't know how to do a facade detail. It's a two specialists. Well, they're only doing what you're going to be doing.
Which of the structures sort of fascinates you even today?
Structures in what
Any
sense?
buildings, anything that you think has got...
Look, I'm really into monolithic architecture.
Okay.
And there isn't really any monolithic architecture around anymore. I mean, when I mean monolithic, I mean quite old. I love contemporary design. I enjoyed the work of all the contemporary designers that are out there. There are ones I enjoy more than others. I admire many of the world's leading architects for different reasons. But the stuff I like is old stuff.
Right.
I mean, if I want to spend my time, I'm not one of these architects who goes on holidays and takes pictures of architecture. It's the last thing I want to do. I spend my life doing architecture. When I go on holiday, I want to chill. When I was in Madrid in the summer, beautiful city, amazing architecture, amazing museums, but I spent some time in the museum, and the rest of the time I spent walking around the streets, enjoying the atmosphere, finding really nice restaurants, finding nice coffees, having a glass of wine, enjoying the weather, and just watching the world go by. That's what I want to do in my free time. I don't want to go and visit architecture. I do that every day in my job, and I see it and I talk about it. And so I'm not an archi freak. I just can't be. I run a business. I need time to just decompress. You know, I told you my other alternative in life is going to be.
Yeah. Do you spend any time on?
I cook a lot. I love cooking.
Fantastic.
One of my favorite things is going around fresh markets. I mean, one of my sort of bugbears here is that there is no fresh markets really.
Yeah.
You know, not like there are. I know when I go to Turkey in the summer, it's just like, I can't tell you, it's a joy for the senses. I mean, you know, everything is seasonal.
Like, have you trained yourself in small ways? So, or is it just learned organically?
Look, my grandmother's taught me to cook. So in Turkey, I grew up watching the ladies of the family cooking.
Yeah.
I would spend time in the kitchen watching it all, you know, being given bits and pieces of food. Food culture in Turkey was huge.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, in Mediterranean cultures, Arabic culture, we as a family would eat en masse as a nuclear family. Food was seasonal, so at the end of the summer, as a family, we would go onto a roof and we would gut the red peppers and string them up to dry to make salt with it. So all of that is imbued in me. So touching food, feeling food, smelling food is like architecture. It's like
exactly.
It's haptic, it's sensory. And that's where the commonality comes. So I love going to the market and just seeing it. You know, the colors are absorbed and the smell is absorbed. Touching it, is it fresh? Is it sweet? Is it sour? Whatever it is, you know, making that selection and then going and preparing it. You know, preparing is like doing the drawing.
It's got a good parallel.
Cooking and architecture, the same thing.
Yeah.
In my life, it's all ingredients, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. Interesting.
And so for me, my relaxation is to spend 3 or 4 hours in the kitchen, and you know, a few hours in the market, talking to the stallholders, choosing the best produce, visiting a farm, that sort of stuff I like.
Interesting. Next generation architects.
It's very interesting. You know, there's all these generational comparisons on Gen X. You know, we're supposed to be reactionary to our baby boomer parents, and I don't see that. My parents were really hard-working people. They weren't these sort of drop-out types. Both my parents were the first of their families to go to higher education. So I'm second generation. I saw their sacrifices to get me through school. So
I can relate to that. Yeah. My parents have not even finished schooling. Yeah, so I can relate when you say you're second generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's we didn't come from a privileged background, so I'm very lucky. I feel extremely fortunate to be the person I am. You know, of course, there's been a hard work, but a lot of it was because of what my mum and my father did to get me to where I am today. So I don't forget that. So when we talk about millennials, when we talk about Gen Z,
and do you meet these guys?
Yeah, they work in
universities.
We meet them at universities. Of course, you know, we're involved with academic environment. We can share the knowledge that we have, and we can be empathetic about. But you can only be empathetic within your own paradigm.
That's right.
You can look at and you can hypothesize and you can debate how the other generations work. But your own paradigm is you, and so there is a change. There is a change of expectations in millennials and Gen Zs. From when I got my first job, I was immensely grateful. It was a life-changing experience. I mean, the person I became today started when I got my first job. And, you know, for good or for bad, I live my job. It's part of my life, and I'm framed by what I do in my job. Not just that, but largely it plays a big part of who I am as a person. And so when I don't see that level of commitment from other people, I find it really tough to accept, because I've gone through a cycle where I've earned my way through my career, through my own endeavors, and I've never expected anybody to give me anything. And so I accept that there are other approaches and that other people have different choices. But when you work with me, you have to make some compromises, because this is the business I run, and these are the expectations I have for the business. How you fulfill those is entirely up to you. The choices that you make as an individual within the business, as long as the end results are achieved, I'm not going to interfere. And if the end results are not achieved, we have to have a conversation. And that's made plain, I think, in terms of when people say, "But we want to do this," okay, fine, we'll do that. But we have to do this too. This is what the business needs of us. You want to earn a salary, you want to take home a good income, you want to be on par with your fellows. Okay, we want you to do that as well. But to do that, we have to do this. We have to deliver this. And in our profession, it's not a 9-to-5 job.
That's right.
It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a job that you live, and that never will change, however much you want it, unfortunately. And so, I, as I say, you make as much or as little of your career as you want. Those who rise at the top are the ones who want it the most.
That's right.
It's as simple as that. How you get there, I don't want people stepping on other people. And I won't have people like that in the organizations that I work with, because respect, care, trust, commitment, and integrity, loyalty, those are maybe old-fashioned words, but they still mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Absolutely. Even if they don't articulate them.
Absolutely.
If you betray people or you let people down, whether they articulate it or not, they still hold it. So in our profession, you're only as good as your last job. It doesn't matter if the first stage of the project was an amazing success. If at the end of it, the project is a bum, they're always going to remember you for the bum, not for the good work that you did at the beginning. So that's the story that we try to get across to our junior staff who are coming through the profession. And we still have to have that conversation with some of our senior staff. There becomes choices in people's lives. This is what the business needs of you, and we welcome you in the business. But if it's not something that you can do, then maybe it's time that you have to think about what you want to achieve for yourself. And if we can't give you that in, I'm sure there are other organizations that you can achieve it with. And those sort of conversations are often tough and challenging, but they're important to have honestly, because, there's nothing worse than not giving people choice. I would rather say to someone, "This is your choices," than say, "Sorry, we don't need you anymore." Let them make their choice. So it's important that you don't disempower people. You have to set the parameters. Otherwise, it's not. You can't then be surprised if they say you've treated me badly if you haven't given them the parameters. So I've learned that the hard way along my career, both as being on the receiving end, but also at times having that in my own learning process as a leader, being confronted by those statements to myself, which you have to be honest about. If you've made a mistake, you have to put your hand up and say, "I made a mistake," and you have to apologize. And of course, learn from it. That's what's the point.
Well, Kerem, thank you very much, first of all, for this discussion. A lot of insights about your career and what you think about the things like AI and BIM and all of it. Appreciate this very much, and I wish you all the best for your current and future projects in the region. And I will continue to see more at our events. And
absolutely, I'd be delighted to attend. I mean, these events are really good opportunity to meet colleagues, meet interesting guys like you, but also to see what's going on in the industry in terms of sometimes in my role, I like to come to these events, even though I'm not necessarily specifying. It just reminds me where I started my career. And sometimes you can easily lose touch with what's going on. So it's really good to be sitting in front of the suppliers. And I think sometimes it's a thankless task for them, but they're the guys that make things possible for us. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.